I just can't comprehend that a normal day can end in such disarray. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my Wicked Winter series. I'm Brooke Makenna, but this video is about the Walker family murders. Now, in yesterday's video, I hinted that this might be today's video, and for good reason. So I suggest if you haven't watched that one, go ahead and watch that one first and come back to this one, because not only did that one happen before, it also may have been done by the same people. There's a huge conspiracy around this case that we're going to do today because it is unsolved, unlike that one, which is solved, but it would make more sense if you watch that one before you do watch this one. By the way, I'm posting 31 days of consecutive content for Wicked Winter this December, so if you would like to make sure to be caught up and watching every day, getting the notifications, make sure that you are subscribed with the bell on. Now let's get back to the story. So it was December 20th of 1959 in Osprey, Florida at the Walker family home. They lived at Palmer Ranch, where their 25-year-old father Cliff worked as a farmhand. He had a wife, a 24-year-old named Christine Walker, and a 3-year-old son named Jimmy, and a 1-year-old daughter named Debbie. But on the 20th, a coworker of Cliff's named Dawn had gone to their house to pick Cliff up to go hog hunting with them. They both worked on the same ranch, so they had houses on the same land, so Dawn went to go pick him up. He thought something was very off when he pulled up in his small truck to the house, and the house was still completely dark. He got out and it was still quiet as well, and he knew that this was off because this family, the Walker family, normally was buzzing around this time. They had 2 toddlers. Toddlers don't really sleep in that well. They don't really sleep at all. And normally the house was so loud and bright and cheerful, but today it wasn't. He went up to the door and he knocked, and nobody answered. At this point, he had a gut feeling something was very wrong, and he didn't waste any time. He started to cut through the screen door to get inside, not even thinking about what he was going to run into or what he was going to do, just that he wanted to help and get to the bottom of it. But he quickly realized once he got inside that he was far too late, because Christine was already in a pool of her own blood directly in the doorway to the living room. And Cliff and the son, Jimmy, were in the corner of the room dead as well. He didn't even realize that Debbie was nowhere to be found. He just ran to go call the police, and when the investigators got there and went to search the crime scene, they found Debbie in the bathtub, deceased. They then put together a timeline on what they believed happened to this family, and they said the day prior, on December 19th, they were out running errands, and Christine was the first one to come home at around 4 p.m., and she was well enough to put away the groceries before the killer or the killers attacked. It was unknown whether they were already in the home or they broke in once she was home, or possibly she let them in. But it was known that she fought back because the blood on the heel of her shoe showed that she fought back aggressively, but she couldn't get away. She was then sexually assaulted and shot with a .22 caliber firearm. And then it was thought that Cliff walked in with his 2 kids, having no idea what had just happened, and they were all killed as well. Jimmy and Cliff were shot and left in the room, but it was unknown why Debbie was taken to the bathtub, or if she was shot before or after she was taken there. But it was theorized that possibly she was taken to the bathtub to be drowned once the first shot didn't kill her, and possibly the killers ran out of ammunition. But one thing that was odd was that she was found wearing Jimmy's hat over her head, and it was too big for her. It covered her eyes. News spread and articles broke saying the heartbreaking detail that the Christmas tree and presents around it were up for a family who just wanted a peaceful holiday. But no one knew who could have done this to this family. You see, Cliff and Christine had met in Arcadia, Florida. Cliff was the more introverted, reserved type personality, whereas Christine was the outgoing, loud, could get along with anybody. So they were definitely the polar opposites attract. But they had been married for 5 years, and Cliff was a very lucky guy because Christine had multiple proposals from when she was young that she didn't accept, but she accepted his. They had Jimmy, and 2 years after they got married, they moved to Osprey, where they had Debbie, and they moved for Cliff's new job as a farmhand. With him being this farmhand, it also came with home and a property because he worked on the property. And although there was different farmhands that were also living on the property, it was 14,000 acres, so there was definitely enough space between them. And they seemed really happy. But fast forward to December 18th, the day before the murder, Christine had wrote a letter to her mother. All it said was that she was excited to see her for Christmas and that there was something she needed to tell her once she got there. The next day, the day of the murders, they went grocery shopping and then they planned to go car shopping in Sarasota. They were looking at a 1956 two-tone Chevy at one shop and a Jet, a Hudson Jet, at the other. They were found to have gone to eat lunch at a shop where Cliff got cigarettes, the kids got candy, they got lunch, and then they had to head back to the dealership because one of the kids had dropped the keys to their actual car out of the window when they had gone for a test drive, so they had to go pick up their keys. After that, they headed to Cliff's coworker and friend Dawn's house. Christine stayed at the house with his wife Lucy while they went hunting at about 2 p.m. and the women stayed with the kids. They were only gone for about an hour, but during this time, Lucy, Dawn's wife, heard Christine make a phone call to a relative saying that they were going to trade a car. When the men came back, they loaded up Cliff Walker's truck with cattle feed because it needed to be taken to their end of the land. They lived on complete opposite sides of the farmland that they worked on, so it needed to be transferred. The kids said that they wanted to stay and help their dad, so Christine let them and she went ahead and headed home at about 3:45. 10 minutes later, however, she was spotted at a gas station airing up her tires, and from that gas station, it would have taken her about 10 minutes to get home. So it was estimated that it would have been about 4:05 when she would have gotten home, and Cliff was still at Dawn's house with the kids. At 3:50, Cliff used Dawn household phone to make a call, but it's not sure to who because they didn't answer. At around 4 o'clock, he said he needed to go ahead and get going, even though they invited him to stay longer. He said he needed to get going, and so they took the Jeep, him and the kids, and they headed home. At 4:15, he pulled up into the same gas station that Christine had to air up his tires as well, which would have put them getting home at about 4:25. Now, the weird thing was, Christine had parked back far enough from the entrance that a whole nother car could fit in front of her car, as if someone was already there. And why would she do that if she had a trunk full of groceries that she needed to take in? Why would she park back that far if nobody was there? A pilot then came forward saying that he was flying his plane at about 4:20 that day over that same area when he saw 2 cars parked there. But if Christine was startled by this other car or possibly a person, she didn't show it because she put up her purse, she hung up a Christmas card she got that day on the fridge. But that wasn't unusual for her because she was a very friendly person who was trusting of everyone. Cliff's Jeep still had the feed in it when it was found at the crime scene, which made police believe that he either went in to go drop off the kids before he went to the barn to unload it, or he saw the car and wondered who it was, so went to go check before he did. He obviously wasn't scared though because he left a rifle in the truck and he brought the kids in with him. And then they were all gone within minutes. While the police searched the crime scene, they found that Cliff's pocket knife was gone, as well as Christine's high school majorette uniform and the couple's marriage license. Now, a bloody cowboy footprint was found, but they weren't sure if it wasn't from a deputy at the crime scene. There was also what was thought to be a fingerprint found on the faucet, but it turned out just to be a palm print. In the pool of blood around Christine, there was a cellophane wrapper from a Cool cigarette, but it didn't match the cigarette brand that Cliff smoked. And the tire marks that were the biggest evidence that could have been found that were in front of Christine's car were destroyed when an officer pulled right in there in the same exact spot, destroying it all, having no idea what he destroyed. Semen was also found on Christine's underwear, but nothing could be done with it back then. A dark hair was found near the bathtub, which didn't match any of the family, and a long blonde hair was in Christine's dress, which didn't match them either. The funerals were held in Arcadia in their hometown with 500 people in attendance, and Cliff's ranch boss actually held a reward, but nobody came forward with anything. Police interviewed 587 suspects and possible witnesses, gave them polygraph tests, but no one was ever arrested until a serial killer confessed. His name was Emmett Monroe Spencer, and he said his girlfriend, Mary, had seen Christine at the grocery store and wanted to follow her home. Except a sheriff on his case warned that he was a pathological liar whose confession was a combination of real murders he learned about on the news and true crime novels he liked to read. A few months after the murders, a woman went out to her own shed and found bloody clothes there. She found 2 shirts, a skirt, and a handkerchief, but she also found a shirt that belonged to Cliff. This shed was a mile from the house, and it was thought that possibly the killer had gone there to clean up and change out of the clothes that they had been wearing when they killed the Walker family. And they had taken Cliff's shirt to clean it all up. But nothing ever came from that evidence either. Then in 1994, a waitress came forward saying that in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, she was a waitress, and she had a customer who was about 60 years old boast about killing the Walker family. Except he also was crying about it and giving details. But he was never found again, and this woman did not give any contact information, saying she would call back, but she never did. The Walker family also had a neighbor called Wilbur Tucker, and he was said to have gone over to their house often. But it wasn't as innocent as a neighborly visit. Apparently, he was obsessed with Christine and would often touch her inappropriately and make her very uncomfortable. And then one day he tried to kiss her, and Christine told her husband Cliff about it, and he wanted to kill the man. But he didn't. He just threatened him, saying that to stay away from his house and his wife. Now, Wilbur has an alibi for this night, but only at around 5 or a little bit later in Sarasota at a dinner party, but it can't be confirmed exactly when he got there, and that little time difference could make a whole heck of a difference on whether he could have murdered this family and been there in time for dinner or not. But nobody knows, and nothing else was ever found to connect him to the murders. Then there was a meter reader in the area named Stanley Muck, who was thought to be questionable in this case. See, the reason why is because another house he was a meter reader for had a murder happen there just a few months prior. On August 7th, a 22-year-old named Chandler Stevens had died in the rental house, was murdered in the rental house. He was beaten, tied, stabbed, and tortured, and then a few months later, the entire Walker family was murdered as well. And upon digging into Stanley Muck, he had also at one point been treated for homicidal tendencies against his own family, but nothing could be found to link him either. Cliff had also gotten in a fight with an unknown person 2 days before the murders that was bad enough that Christine not only told her mother about it, but also told a random cashier. But this case went cold for many years, having no real leads, suspects, anything, until 2007 when Detective Kimberly McGath reopened the case in hopes of connecting the Walker murders to the Clutter murders that we talked about yesterday. But as you know, if you watched my video yesterday, their murders were solved. The Clutter family had justice. Perry and Dick were executed for their murders, but the amount of details in the Clutter case and the Walker case was uncanny. So much so that Perry himself, before he was executed, said it looked so much like what they did that it possibly was a copycat. But when this Walker case was reopened, it was found that Perry and Dick were among the suspects back in 1960 for the Walker murders too. Because the morning of the murders, they checked out of a hotel in Miami Beach, Florida, and they were seen at a store in Sarasota 10 miles from the crime scene. A witness at the store said that the taller one, who was Dick, had a scratched up, bruised face that day. When the two were caught, they were also given polygraphs for this case, the Walker case, and they passed. but polygraphs back then really couldn't be tested. I mean, they really can't even still be today. And they also had on them a pocket knife that resembled Cliff's pocket knife that was stolen. And Perry and Dick were using a 1956 Chevy to get around in, which was exactly what the Walker family was looking to buy that day. Could Perry and Dick have possibly gained entry into the Walkers' home by saying they were selling the car, by, being friendly to Christine and then attacking her, and that's why she was fine, because she just thought she was buying a car? But if so, then why did Perry and Dick do it if they knew that they weren't going to get much money, they didn't steal much? Why would they kill this entire family? Unless, of course, they just wanted to kill again. But remember, Christine's underwear had bits of semen on it. So in December of 2012, they exhumed Perry and Dick's bodies to extract DNA from the bones to test it against it to see if they could get a match. But because only partial DNA could be retrieved, it came back as inconclusive. And they still remain main suspects in this unsolved case, but what would their motive have been if it wasn't robbery, because they really didn't steal all that much? So why? Some strongly believe it was someone who knew the Walker family that killed them and not Perry and Dick. And I can kind of see why. It was very personal, almost against Christine, and the fact that they took her high school uniform makes me wonder if possibly she did have many people who proposed to her when she was younger. Maybe one of those people she denied got angry at her perfect life, her perfect marriage, and went and killed the whole family, and that's why they took the high school uniform to reminisce, and the marriage license to go and shred it up. But I also wouldn't doubt that Perry and Dick would be capable of murdering a completely other family, because they just had zero remorse for what they did to the Clutter, so why would they care to do it again? Do you see the similarities between the Clutter case we talked about yesterday and this case? I mean, I see so many. It's almost like an identical, even how they were found is almost identical, and I truly believe it could have been the same person. It could have been a copycat, or it could have been someone who just had a vengeance for Christine or the whole family, or what seemed like their perfect life. But I'd love to hear your theories down below on what you think happened, because like I said, it's still an unsolved case, and I just hope at some point someone finds something, even if it's because this case happened very long ago, but you never know. It could be passed from generation to generation evidence, or, the truth could be passed down, and somebody could come forward and bring this case the justice it deserves. So I really hope so. And if you want me to do more series where I do like back-to-back cases of things that could possibly connect, I would love to. Just let me know down below. And yes, this case was not the easiest for me to talk about due to the fact that they were such small kids. As you could tell, I kind of glazed that over. Not because I don't care to share their story, but because it can be really hard to talk about and hear about. So I'm sorry if it was a little hard for you to hear. But I did still want to shed light on this case, because these people do deserve their cases to be solved, their murders to be solved. It's a whole entire family. I just can't imagine. But if you are interested in hearing about cases like this and shining light on them, giving them more exposure, I am posting 31 days of consecutive content for Wicked Winter this December, so make sure you're subscribed with the post notification bell on, and thumbsing up if you just want to make me a little happy, commenting down below if you want me to feel less crazy for talking about this stuff all the time. But yeah, don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye. I believe some motives are an excuse to hide the evil they let loose.